Hello, good morning, and welcome to episode 3 of a 4-part series, Ready to Win. This series is targeted toward my job seekers in a very hot job market. I wanted just to come and share some information with you about how to make sure that your job search is successful, step by step from A to offer. And so if you have not watched the first 2 parts of this series, I definitely encourage you to go back and catch that. Episode 1 was talking about the documentation that you needed in your job search. Episode 2 was talking about first impressions and the things that help you or assist you before you even sit at the table and open your mouth, have a conversation with anybody. And then this episode 3, Hot Seat, is talking about the interview process. Excuse me and forgive me. The interview process. So we are going to be talking about preparation, presence, and post-interview techniques. Now, I'm not going to go through and give you every single detail, how to answer specific questions. If you do research on Google, you'll find a lot of information, a lot of videos out there that are focused on those types of things. I want to come and give you some little known tips and facts about things that you should be more cognizant of as you are in your interview process. So that is what the hot seat is about. And if you have not joined me before, first of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for watching, and hopefully thank you for subscribing and sharing this with someone who you think could be beneficial or benefited by it. My name is Ms. J. I am a coach, a business owner, entrepreneur of a company called the Illumin Group, LLC, where I do coaching and consulting, specializing in leadership and in career strategies. So wanted to just reach out, send this information out into the universe, and hopefully it can impact somewhere, wherever you are watching. It would do my heart good just to know that you're here. So leave a like or a comment. Let me know where you're from, and I will be so excited to know that this information is being shared. So let's go ahead and get into it because I have a lot of information to share with you today. I do have some screen sharing that I'm going to do so that you can watch along, read the major points, and take notes. So I like my Miss J family to make sure that they are settled in, comfy for a good 30-45 minutes with a notepad or a pencil so that they can absorb the information and jot down the things that will be most beneficial to them in their journey. So I invite you to do the same before we go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and transition over, and you'll see the first screen that says Hot Seat, Interview Do's and Don'ts. So we're going to talk today about a lot of things, but I wanted you to know that an interview can open or close the door on your opportunities. You've already sent documents to the interviewer or to the hiring team, to whoever may have been on the receiving end. Your resume, your cover letter, your application, any supporting documentation that was requested has already been in the room and has spoken for you. And now it is your turn to make sure that you are following up with the same level of confidence, with the same level of curiosity, engagement, etc., so that you can give them the information that they need to make a decision that's beneficial for you. So interviews are important. However, I want you to understand that preparation will be everything that you need to do before you walk into the room. Therefore, you don't have to worry about being too nervous. You don't have to worry about what's going to happen. What am I going to say? Every interview is basically the same. And once you understand that an interview process is just a conversation to learn more about you and your opportunity to learn more about the organization, then you will approach it different. It feels like scrutiny. It may feel like an interrogation. However, it is a conversation. So in order for you to be prepared for the conversation, you're going to do a couple of different things. Do your research on the organization. Check out their website. Google and make sure, see if there are any press releases or news or current events that you should be aware of. check out the business journals, check on the financial status, make sure that they're a solid company. You understand what their business history is. And then if there's anything that has been happening around the organization in the recent times, you want to make sure you've done your research so that you can understand how those potential changes or current events or whatever it may be could potentially impact your organization. So sometimes your entry into the organization. Sometimes people are interviewing and there is a lot of transitioning happening with the organization. They might be acquiring companies. They might be merging with companies. They might be selling. And you enter into that not understanding what that long-term impact may be. So make sure you understand what you are going to be, what type of organization you're walking into, and what their current state of affairs is. Now, this isn't a highly shared technique, but for those that are mid to upper level in their career, it's definitely an opportunity to make sure that you're asking the right questions if you're going to have a long-term investment. You don't necessarily need to do this if you're going to be working potentially like fast food types of organizations, because there are multiple of those. But if you're growing a career and you plan on staying with an organization and trying to move throughout the organization for a long period of time, you want to make sure that the stability is there. So read your Bloombergs, read your business journals. Of course, and the internet is your friend. So whatever browser you're using, just make sure that you've searched around. And if you are doing a high volume job search, you probably don't want to do this for 17 jobs. If you are being more selective in your search because you know what type of company you want to work for and the type of role that you want for, this 30-45 minutes worth of research can go a long way. But if you did that for 17 potential jobs, you may want to just tone it back and do these things before your interview and not necessarily before each application or submission. So preparation will help you go a long way, and being confident that this is potentially a good fit for you, but also you want to make sure that you're doing research on the interview panel. So if you receive an itinerary and you're going to be able to see who you're meeting with and what the order of your interview is, use LinkedIn. It's public information. It is information that you can use to see if there's any connection or history that you can use to build rapport with your interviewers. Now, there is a strategic way to do that. You don't want to walk in and feel like you're fangirling or fanboying over someone because you know their whole entire resume and what they've been up to. However, you might want to drop it into conversation where it feels most natural, and then people understand that you have been doing research, you know who they are, and how they might have an impact on your role with the organization. So LinkedIn, Google, business journals, press releases, all of those types of things is something that you're going to want to take your time to look for as you move forward into your interview. So preparation is key. Now, in an interview, there is a lot of potential anxiety and stress around the fact that you are going to be questioned by someone that you don't know. I want you to understand that this is your interview. On both sides of this table that you see right now, both of them are gathering information to make a decision. And so the interviewee is gathering information on whether this is the right type of place that I want to land and grow my career. And the interviewer is trying to figure out if the information presented in the resume is, number one, accurate, if it's truthful, and if the personality of the person sitting across the table is a good fit. So fit for the team and organization is a very strong part of what the interview is about. So you just sit back, try to stress less, and think about it as you have ownership in this as well. Not ownership and just selling yourself, but ownership and making sure that you have enough information to make a decision about whether you're going to join the team if the job offer comes through. And so that is where we're going to talk about getting relaxed, getting comfortable, and making sure that your presence in the interview room is something that is memorable and that leaves a fantastic impact so that you can be the one that they select for the offer. So I'm going to talk about the 3 E's of interview presence, and that they are engage, elaborate, and examples. And we're going to talk about each of these briefly as well. So an engaging conversation is one where everyone is active, and it shows not only in the way that they are bouncing ideas or conversation flows easily across the table, but it also shows in facial expression and body language. You see in this picture that the people are leaning in, that there are smiles on faces, there's eye contact, and everyone is connected. It doesn't feel like there is any stress in this conversation. And when I say that, I'm talking about, in an interview where there's the straight back interviewer or interviewee and barely any eye contact, and they're looking down at their papers. They're not drawn in. And so your job is to make sure that you are an engaging interviewee, that you draw them in to your story, that they get to see some of your personality and how you are able to build rapport. So try to be as engaging as possible. If you don't know what that looks like, one of my tips for you is to find someone who sees you and knows you at a level where they can tell you how you act when you are open and engaged and interested, and how you act when you're not. Someone who sees you in multiple scenarios. They might see you in a professional network or a personal network or a friend circle. And they'll be able to tell you, when you're not really interested, your face goes blank, your eyes glaze over, whatever the case may be. You want to make sure that you are open enough in your posture and your facial expression and your verbal intellect and how you converse with the table, so that they also get drawn into that energy. So you can control the temperature of the room by how you engage. So want you to definitely make sure you're mindful of that. Don't let your nervous energy settle in and take a hold of you, but you want to make sure that you are just open to the conversation. And there's nobody in the room who knows you or your experiences better than yourself. So you should be the most comfortable person in the room. Just keep that in mind, and hopefully it'll be a great tip for you moving forward. So elaborate. And when I talk about elaborate, I'm talking about giving more detail, giving some additional insight on the question that was asked. Even if it is a yes or no question, if someone asks you, do you know how to use Excel? And you say yes, don't stop at yes. You should say, yes, I use Excel on a daily basis to create reports, to document entry, to do data entry for different processes. I download information out of a system. I make an Excel report. I extract some of the data and interpret my analysis, and I send it to XYZ for use. That allows them to get the information that they really want, because you have taken the time to elaborate and not to just say yes or no. One or two sentences for a yes or no question, or if they are asking you for an example, then I want you to kind of build the story. And this translates into our third E. You should be providing examples that paint a picture for the team. You want them to be able to clearly visualize what you have done, what you are capable of doing, what your process was, etc., by giving those examples. So if you get a behavioral interview question of, tell me about a time when you XYZ, tell me about a time where you had to lead planning for an organization-wide event. And then you say, okay, well, it was my responsibility to organize the employee recognition meeting for mid-year and end of the year. And my team did XYZ. This was the budget. These are the steps that we took. This was the outcome. You want to make sure that you paint the picture, not only about the things that you did as a part of that team or as the leader, but also about just the scope of responsibility. So use examples. Think about things that you can tell them, and you're going to build your examples off of the resume. So if you haven't watched the first episode where we're talking about on paper, I want you to go back and make sure that you understand how your resume should look. Because the resume, if your familiarity with the resume, You should already have some built-in examples for everything that you have documented. So this should come easy. It should roll off the tongue. When you think about the only information that they have from you is what you have already put on paper. So everything that you have documented, you should have a story. You should have an example. You should have something that you can, again, build, share, and just create the imagery so that they can understand, okay, that's how she has operated in the past, or he has operated in the past. This is how that could apply in our organization. You want to basically create the vision for them, and so that they can easily tie together what they're looking for with what you are capable of doing. So we get to the end of the interview and they say, do you have any questions? And a lot of times people freeze here, but there is an opportunity for you to continue to not only sell yourself in this, but to also make sure you're gathering the information that you need to make a decision about the company that you're interviewing with. Again, I said, it is your interview, so you have some ownership in this as well. You should not walk out of the door with question marks about anything, because if they called you 2 hours later and said, hey, we want you to join our team, you shouldn't have to go and ask any additional questions. You should know at that point whether it's a job that you want with a company, or with a company that you want, or not. So take advantage of the questions. And if you're given the opportunity, thread your questions throughout the conversation so you don't have to sit there and ask 16 questions at the end. And that these are two types of questions that I want you to integrate into the current questions that you're using. So you're definitely going to want just some open-ended questions. You're going to want some information. Hopefully you've already had information about salary, schedule, all of those basic things before you even sit down at the table. But I want you to also start to integrate, 1, probing questions, and number 2, funnel questions. And let's talk about what those are and what it looks like. So a probing question is a questions that you're going to ask about information that's already been presented to you to get additional information. So someone may have been describing a process to you and say, our process is for our representatives to do A, B, C, D, E. And if you have prior experience, you might know that the process goes beyond E to H. So you could say, well, I heard you describe the process and you told me that you did A, B, C, D, E. However, in my prior experience, I also was responsible for doing F, G, H. And can you give me more information about where those things are, if they're included in your process, etc.? The probing question does 2 things. It lets your interviewer know that you are paying attention, that you're listening. It also lets them know that you have some prior experience with what they've been describing, and you want additional information. It allows you to get that information so you can see if your experience is similar and if you're properly aligned, or if there are some differences. But you can demonstrate your expertise and your knowledge by circling back to the things that were mentioned, but you want to see, is there additional alignment here? If you are paying attention to your interviewers and you're asking questions, or they are providing you information, things that you probably never heard of, because they're going to have an insider perspective on not only the company, but also on what this role is supposed to do. So if you're listening carefully and out of your head and engaged in the conversation, you'll have several opportunities to ask people to elaborate more on something that they mentioned. So pay attention, find those nuggets of information that you need more information on, and ask probing questions. It shows that you're interested, it shows that you're paying attention, and it also demonstrates some of your expertise as well. The next type of question is called a funnel question. And this funnel can go either direction. A lot of information down to a more specific question, or a specific question that hopefully leads you to a lot more information. But whichever the case, you are at the top of the funnel, whether it's this way or flipped the other way. Funnel questions can be used to get more information, to diffuse the situation, and help you to gain insight. If you use a funnel question that is in the format of this a lot of information down. A great way to use this is by providing them with information that you've gathered from your research, and then drilling all of that information down into one particular question in which you ask them to elaborate more on. So you could say, I saw on your recent press release that you had a interest in Kenya by doing the social justice reform. There was some information that was posted out there about your partners that you were working with, the mission that you had. Can you tell me more about the impact that you've had on the ground, or what you've been able to accomplish over the last year or year and a half? What that says is, hey, I've researched. I know that you have some things going on outside of this building that I'm interested in. I'm paying attention to where your global or your world impact is. And I want to know, have you achieved the results so that you were seeking in that endeavor? It can take the form of something like that. It can be any information where you say, okay, this is what the media is reporting, but I want to take this opportunity to get an insider view. You can also do this by building questions and providing information that you've gathered over the course of your interview. So if you have interviewed 2 or 3 times, or with 3 or 4 people, you can take the opportunity to ask the same question to get a different perspective. And so your funnel question may sound a little like this. Hey, in my first interview with Beverly and Charles, I asked them about XYZ and they told me ABC. If I ask you that question, what would be your perspective? So what that might do for the interviewer who's currently sitting across the table for you says, okay, well, number 1, this is an important topic for her. But number 2, I also know that some of my team members have explored this conversation, and so I'll add my perspective. It doesn't feel top secret at that point in time because you've already had the conversation with two additional people. So they may be more willing to give you additional insight, and they might provide more information. I do highly recommend asking some questions to every interviewer if you're going to be having multiple sessions, to see if the answers are the same, to see if they give you different perspectives. And depending on their position and their tenure with the organization, you might get a completely different vantage point based on who you're talking to. So this is a way to use it. Now, the opposite way, that if you were to invert the funnel and there's a skinny part at the top, you could say your website, something of this nature. Your website mentioned that your employee recognition program was one of the most competitive or one of the most beneficial in the industry. Can you tell me more about that? So you started with one simple nugget fact that you've picked up, and then you're asking them to give you a more broad information, based on what that single little thing that you've asked. So you've basically flipped the funnel, given a little information, hoping to get more information out of the interviewer that you are talking to. So, all right, those are 2 questions that I want you to integrate into your questioning. 2 different types of questions. Make sure that you kind of, again, use the information that you've gathered to build these questions so that they are relevant to the individual or to the organization that you are speaking with. And most of these have to be crafted in an individualistic way. You can't use the same question unless it's a broad industry question. If it's a healthcare question and you're interviewing with the healthcare field, then of course you might can use it across multiple employers. But if you're going to be talking to a specific employer about something in their press release or something in their organization, those questions are going to have to be crafted individually and specific to that team. So I've talked about some of the things to do to help improve your presence in an interview, because that is what matters. Your energy, your presence matters in the interview, because that helps them to visualize fit with the team, with the supervisor, within the organization, etc. But there are some things that we're going to just throw in the trash. We're not going to do it. We're going to just leave it right there. And hopefully you will be better at your aim and landing these things than this person who just has no shot at all. So what we're going to do is talk about the 4 don'ts, and I'm going to talk about them in reverse order. So 4, 3, 2, 1. So the number 4 thing that I want you to stop doing, don't do, throw it in the trash, is overthinking. I do not want you to overthink it. An interview, again, is a conversation about your skill set. And so when you think about, oh my gosh, they're going to be interviewing me, they're going to be judging me, what are the questions, who am I going to talk to? You build up so much anxiety and nervousness around the event that when you get there, your brain is in kind of fight or flight mode. You're in response mode instead of engagement mode. So what you want to do is just say, you know what? They want to talk about me. They want to talk about the things that I've done, my knowledge, skills, and experience. And I know that like the back of my hand. I know what I've done like the back of my hand. Nobody in the room knows it better than I do. So let's go have a conversation about what I can bring to the team. That will help increase your confidence, decrease your stress and anxiety, and all of those things that come along with it. I have interviewed, if not thousands of people over the course of my career, and I have seen anxiety show up in so many different ways, from the sweats, from not being able to talk, stuttering, the flushing of the skin and the face, almost about to pass out, needing a drink of water and a timeout. It is not a good look. It is not a good look. We're not going to do that, because what that says is I don't know how to cope with my stress under a tense situation. I can't be resilient, and I shut down. And if you are going to be in a place where you have to solve problems or face the unknown, those types of signals in an interview is definitely going to work to your detriment. So don't overthink it. Think about, I'm going to talk about me. Nobody in the world knows me better than me. So our number 3 don't is don't talk too much. I told you earlier in your presence that you definitely want to elaborate and you want to provide examples, but you don't want to be giving a monologue about something that is entirely too long. You don't want the faces to go blank, the eyes to glaze over, them to disengage, start checking their watch, etc. You have to be able to read the room, but you also have to be able to be more concise about what you're saying so that you can provide an example and then you can stop. And if there are any additional questions, it'll give them an opportunity to engage you more about that. But your story you should not be answering a question for 3 minutes. 3 minutes is entirely too long to be talking about, to be speaking on one question. You want to make sure that you are in, that you're concise, and that you get out. Get in, get out, leave the door open for additional probing questions if they need more information. Once you start talking too much, that also sends a signal, number 1, that you're either nervous, or number 2, that you don't understand the question, or number 3, that you just blabber all the time. And so that type of energy sometimes turns people off. Nobody wants to just have someone who sits in their office and talks too much and doesn't know how to exit stage left. So be mindful of how much information you're sharing and making sure that you get the most impact in the least amount of words, but definitely more than 2 sentences and definitely less than 2 paragraphs. So just think about that as a way to measure how you are giving information. Your second don't is don't get too personal. In an interview, of course, they have an opportunity to ask you questions and they want to get to know you. However, they should be getting to know the professional you and not the kicked back, what's my nickname, this is what I do on the weekends type of you. So there are a certain number of questions, or not a certain number of questions, but a certain category of questions that the hiring team cannot ask you. And those can be around your demographics, which sometimes impact how people view your ability to fit in the organization. Oh, she's a spouse, she's a newlywed, so what that might mean. She's a parent, so what that might mean. Oh, he's going through a divorce. What does that mean? People make their own assumptions based on the information that you give them. So if you do not volunteer the information or you don't donate the information to the cause, then they can't use it. You want to make sure that you are focusing on your knowledge, skills, abilities, and experience that ties directly to the organization. It's okay to share your personality, to be engaging, to have a joke, to, fluctuate your tone, etc. However, what you don't want to do is start talking about, oh, I have a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 22-year-old, etc. Because then people's calculations and brains are focusing on your personal life and not on your contributions to the organization. So don't get too personal. Keep it high level. I'm not going to go as far as to tell you to take off your wedding ring so that they won't know you're married. I'm not going to go through all of that. But even if you're sharing that information kind of just as a visual cue, you still don't have to dive into, oh, well, this is my spouse's name and this is where he or she works, etc. That information can happen once the offer letter is signed, sealed, and delivered, and they're trying to build a personal relationship with you. But again, in the workplace, there's a fine line for those types of things. So make sure that you are keeping it tight when it comes to the information that you are giving in your interview. The number one don't assume. And I want to get you to understand exactly what I mean about this. Don't assume that people know exactly what you've done or exactly what your job is, and they know every abbreviation or type of job lingo, because everyone sitting in the room may not have the same background and experience. Just because I hire engineers do not mean that I know everything that an engineer talks about. They start talking about calibrations and measurements and all of these things, and I go, I don't know those things. I'm not an engineer. I will never be an engineer. So if some people will never be doing what you're doing, but they have been invited to the table to assess your ability to fit in the organization, to assess everybody at that table has potentially a different vantage point. And so you want to make sure that in your conversation, you are being as clear as possible about what you're talking about. So I wouldn't go and start talking about FLSA without saying the Fair Labor Standards Act. I wouldn't go over here and talk about FMLA without saying Family and Medical Leave Act, because I don't know that everyone around the table understands what FLSA and FMLA is. Those are things that are key to the industry and to my career and to my job. However, that isn't what's happening in everyone's world. So you have to make sure that you are being clear, that you are giving examples, that you are providing information so that everyone is on the same playing field. You want to make sure that you are building allies around the room, because the people that you're talking to are going to be the ones who have a vote in whether you join the team or not. So if you are leaving someone behind or excluding them out of your conversation because you're talking in a words or a manner that they don't understand, then they don't necessarily have a strong pull on whether they're going to vote for or against your joining. So you want to make sure that you are building bridges and bringing folks into the conversation by talking in quote unquote layman's terms. We want to talk about, this is the process for helping someone who has a sick family member, and we would provide them with documentation, and the documentation is out of the Family and Medical Leave Act, and so that documentation allows us to XYZ blah blah blah. You want to talk at that level so that everyone around the room understands what's happening and the information that you're given. Now, when you're in a room with someone who is in your same profession, so if I'm interviewing for a finance job and I'm talking to the chief financial officer, some of those things are going to be easy. I don't necessarily have to break it down to that level. However, if I'm talking to the chief financial officer and I'm talking to the operations manager and I'm talking to the marketing team all at the same time, when my language is just targeted to the financial people, then the rest of the people at the table are left behind. So don't assume that everyone knows exactly what you're saying. Don't assume that they know exactly what you've done in the past. You need to provide those examples and provide some additional insight at a lower level so that everyone can digest it and understand it. All right, so you make it through your interview and now you're at the place where you are trying to figure out, what do I do next? It traditionally has been okay for me to, send an email, send a thank you letter, whatever the case may be. How do I do or navigate the situation? And I'm going to give you a couple of tips on what to do. First of all, yes, if you are interested in the job and it's something that you want to make sure that you come full circle and close the loop with a thank you. Now, if you've interviewed only with 1 or 2 people, I would say if you've interviewed with less than 4 folks, feel free to go ahead and send a thank you card. It feels old fashioned, but it definitely is the extra mile because not many candidates are going to do that. So that's an above and beyond step by having the thank you letter ready to go. So when you get to your car, you already have the stack, you have the address, you can customize the message, and then just drop it in the mail on the way home from your interview. A very easy way to make a very impactful way to make an atypical impact, because the majority of the folks are going to send an email. If you've had a panel interview and you've talked to a whole lot of folks, you want to make sure that you are sending an email either to your contact and asking them to share it to the interview team, or if you have contact information for the ones that have given you a business card, feel free to go ahead and send that information directly to them. But you don't want to send 15 thank you cards. You can send 15 emails fairly easily. Now, the business card exchange during an interview is a formality. A lot of team members will hand out their business cards so that you understand their title and what they are, how they are impacting the organization and potentially your hiring decision. However, you should not be using every single business card, contacting folks multiple times for follow-up just to get information on your hiring process. If you have questions, you need to know where the right contact is, and then if they are the right contact, and typically your primary contact is probably going to be someone in HR or talent acquisition, and you can start there by emailing them and saying, hey, I have a question about XYZ. Would Bob be the right person for me to talk to? And then they'll say yes, or they'll answer the question for you. As a human resources professional, I hand out my business cards, but it is not for you to send me 13 emails in 3 days asking if you're going to get the job. At that point in time, you become a nuisance, and I'm like, okay, there's no understanding that besides hiring, I have 17,000 other things to do. And so patience is key. Use it strategically, use it there's a method to how you want to contact folks. And all of these, I talk with my clients about on presence. I talk with them about post-interview follow-up and preparation. We do all of that work together so that they can go into the interview being their best self and understanding how to control the room and to rock the interview out. But all of that said, you do want to follow up, you do want to close the loop, and it provides you an excellent opportunity, if you are excited about the role, to share that, to reiterate your excitement, what you learned and what you like about the organization, and therefore you're sending the message that I am excited, I'm looking forward to additional communication, and please get back to me. But leave the door open. Once you send that thank you letter, don't keep coming back and checking 16 times. if someone has emailed you. They will be in touch. All right, so thank you for joining me again. I am Miss J. I do coaching for the Illumin Group. And if you are interested, my contact information is here. The website is www.illumin.group. You can book a free consultation. It's always free to have a conversation with me about the things that you're looking for, or the process that you're in, or phase that you're in on your journey. And so you can do that free of charge. I love to understand kind of what the goals are you're looking to achieve and how I could be a help. But if I can't, I definitely have a network of individuals that might be beneficial to you. So I do refer out to those that might be more effective in helping you to reach your target goal, because I think that we all can win, and we all can win together. It's about collaboration, not competition. And so if you're interested in coaching, definitely reach out to me and let's see how we can work together. Now, I have one more episode in the series, and it will be coming up next Saturday. So part 4 of the Ready to Win series will be airing on Labor Day weekend. So I ask you, if you're not going to be out and about, to definitely make sure you come on over and spend some time with me on next Saturday morning. It will be a pre-recorded episode, and so I will be getting back to you as soon as I get that up. I love for you to share the information and to come on over and spend some time with me next Saturday. So if you want to follow, definitely subscribe. Click subscribe over here or down there, wherever it is, for the YouTube channel, so you can get updates and notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook and YouTube at iam.miss.j. That content on my Facebook page is typically more in line with what I'm doing on YouTube. And then the Instagram is, a blend of personal and professional. But feel free to reach out to me for on any platform, and I will be responsive to help you out. So thank you so much. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend and that everything goes according to plan. Enjoy the sun, and we'll see you soon. Bye.